peace. We have other colonies hidden all around the world. We shall be the victors in the war against mankind.
The depths of the sea and those areas on Earth where man cannot live can be yours. Wouldn't it be better to try for a peace? Launch yourself into a war that you cannot possibly win?
And man would agree to that.
We come in peace.
That was one of the worst programs I've ever seen. I need to cleanse my palate and watch the Sense Sphere. That Brendan really knows his stuff.
Oh, thank you, Russell D. I mean, I didn't expect that. Thanks, Russell T. Davies, for your kind comments. For how long, I wonder. Welcome back to our channel to discuss the continuing mini-series, The War Between the Land and the Sea. Now, we shared our first impressions on how episode 3, The Deep, and episode 4, The Witch of the Waterfall, fared. This is what our plan is. We are fair, we are objective, as can be. Those who loved it, those in the middle, those who struggled are all welcome here. This is debate as it should be, mature, sensible, with fair bits of fun and info for balance too. So, welcome one and all. Thank you for joining us. We will have our items, what the F was that, just to see if there's anything that riled us. But we will be fair later on as well, because once we've gone through that water torture, we will obviously ask everybody what made a big impression on you, what made the big splash. You can see what I'm doing. And of course, I will ask the question, can't help it. Is this better or worse than Doctor Who? Because obviously the money was shafted into this pipe for episodes that weren't Doctor Who. So I will ask that question. And so, of course, Russell T himself, you heard from him a minute ago, has been promoting this. Sunday night, the war continues. We descend. Well, before we descend, my panellists ascend. So here comes Joe, up there in Edinburgh. Hiya, Joe.
Hi.
Now, everybody, in a moment, will ask the panellists for their headlines. So it's not going to be me waffling at the beginning, going item by item by item. You're going to hear what they thought. Good, bad, ugly, straight away. So welcome to see you, and welcome, Joe. And we've got Mark from last week. Hiya, Mark.
Hello.
I know. I can't wait to hear. I just can't wait. It's so funny, this, because I just don't know what anyone's going to say. You may note, everybody, if you did watch us last week, that the 3 other panelists were a little bit more lukewarm to the episode. I was like a cold fish for a while, you know, I was. And, of course, to fulfill the quartet, we have Goldie. Hiya, Goldie.
Hello.
Well, let's start. I mean, I promised you, let's start. So, Joe, just so everybody who has either watched it and just wants to share in which panelist are they going to kind of link with tonight, or if people are watching us from abroad and they haven't seen the episodes, what's your big headline regarding the vibe, you know, how it all came across?
I wrote a cheesy one. It's less war between land and sea and more Netflix and Gil.
And we will, once we've got the headlines, I will ask Joe about that a bit later, right, everybody? So you can see she's giving you a clue. Mark, what's your overall vibe of what you saw tonight?
My overall vibe is it started with a nice pace to it, but by the end of it, it felt like a warmed up cold fish dinner.
Oh heck, microwaved fish, isn't it? Yeah. And Goldie, what's your overall vibe?
I think the series started off with a powerful launch, and now it's in the backstroke phase, and there are a few dips, but overall to me, it's kept its consistency.
Okay, so oh my god, we're all getting a bit cuisine here, aren't we? I felt as though part three, it was a big deep dive for a big blow off at the end, so to speak. And part four, I thought was a hell of a mishmash. They needed to decide which way they were going to go with it because there were some interesting ideas, which I'll mention in the big splash. And then there were other bits where I thought, oh my God, we're going Star Trek Discovery, where everybody discusses how they're feeling, what time of the month are they. And I just felt as though it's like, where are we going with this? Anyway, so that's me as well, just so you've heard a bit from everybody in a taster. Go round the panel one more time. One big positive for you, Joe.
Oh, now, one big positive for me. I'm going to struggle because I didn't have a good time tonight. I didn't enjoy that last couple of hours. So let's look for a positive. What was one positive? So I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay,
Honestly,
Doc.
maybe I'm just in a crabby mood, but I'm struggling to find one.
It's
Sorry.
interesting, isn't it, folks? Last week I was the one who thought part one was good, and then it really dipped, and I had a problem. But the other three were a little bit more lukewarm. Interesting that Joe's changed position slightly there. Now, Mark, where do you stand on Big Splash? Something positive from tonight?
I have to say that I'm on the same page with Joe. Really, there were okay bits, nothing big or monumental that I could really put a finger on and say, "Oh, that was absolutely the best thing since sliced bread." But I think if I'm going to say a positive, I would say episode 3, The Deep, was nicely paced. It wasn't all about effects and or anything like that. There were nice character moments in that first episode, building up to the cliffhanger. But beyond that, I would say it was just very meh.
Oh my gosh, so it's interesting. We're going to really explore this, everybody who's watching us. Don't worry, I just want to give you a taste of where we might go. I've made piles and notes as well. So, Goldie, a positive from you if you've got one?
The big positive from me comes during episode 3, where we're watching the team submerge beneath the ocean, and we really get a good sense of just how much weight has been put on their shoulders. We see all of them contemplate the responsibilities they have, and we start seeing people breaking down, and then we start hearing them talk about their families, and, well, if I die, my family's going to be alone. So we really get put in the mindset of these people, and that's probably the strongest thing about this entire series compared to Doctor Who, is there's more emphasis on character, which is something we've been lacking in Doctor Who, where everything seems to be spectacle, but even then it all just looks kind of messy. Whereas this has us back to basics with what Russell's original era of Doctor Who did so well, which is getting us invested in the characters.
Yeah, well, again, we'll explore what Goldie's got to say there. So everyone's got a taster there. We start with the criticism in a minute. So you've had some positives. My positive, I do have them. Oh yeah. I've noted here. Oh yeah, lost at gunpoint. I noted this down. No, it said the underwater scenes. So part 3, basically, of The Deep. I thought anything to do with the diving bell going down, and when we got to that underwater world, which was, set up for the humans, I was looking at it, the colour, the texture, the sound, and just how they allowed us time to enjoy that world. And I was sat there, and I can't help it. I'm a Doctor Who fan, and I was thinking, why did you not just do that with Doctor Who? Because you've built a blooming big world there. You get the big payoff shot at the end when you saw all the Homer Aqua everywhere. And I just thought, I'd have loved to have seen this in Doctor Who, and I'm not quite sure why you didn't allow us to have it. And my other big positive is part 3 was a brilliant cliffhanger. Why the hell am I not allowed them in Doctor Who? And so it's a positive, but I'm a Doctor Who fan, and I keep thinking, I wanted this in my show. So I will look at that as well, because, you can't help. That's where my prism is, how I judge it. So we'll get looking at what happened tonight. So get ready, everybody. We're going to get right into it. We're going to go fishing for comments. See what I did there? Yes, there you go. So we've got a lot to talk about, a lot to get on with. So this is when it's open season and we could go in any direction. Like I said, I've got 10 pages of notes, depending on what people say. Everybody in the thread, I'm not going to ignore you. Don't worry. I will be trying to duck in at various times. Obviously, it's going to be so busy that, yes, I'm going to sound cheeky. If you do have a super chat, tiny bit of, I can notice it because everything else is not color coded, but I will try my best. I will. Tom by Chick, for example, the episode cliffhanger with the bullet that could somehow miss Kate but hit her toy boy in the chest, stabbed into the head. I know. We'll come to the cliffhanger, I'm sure. Right. So one I just wanted to introduce though overall was, Joel Collins, the executive producer, said it's not Doctor Who. We are in the Whoniverse. This is something completely different. I actually thought, and I'm going to say something here to all of you, when I was watching especially part 3, I thought actually what I am seeing here is a slowed down world building classic 5 or 6 episode that you got in the early 70s of Doctor Who. And I'm trying to work out why I'm watching it in a program that's not called Doctor Who. Joe?
Yeah, its identity is a little bit of a mess because when they do try to do these sort of things, we are sitting at home wondering where is the Doctor? If it is actually in his universe, where is he? I mean, and would Tennant's Doctor be able to completely ignore this fish war going on? Would he just be still sitting in the garden? So you've always got that kind of hanging over it, like where is the Doctor, and why is he not responding to this massive situation? So
It's a funny one, isn't it, Mark? Because that part 3, we're going down in the diving bell, all the preparation. The first 10 or 15 minutes, I have to say, I was looking at my stopwatch and I was thinking, we are spending time preparing our humans to go in a diving bell to go to the bottom of the sea. If this was Doctor Who, he just gets in the diving bell and it's done in a minute. And I was wondering about pacing and all the rest of it, Mark, and I was thinking, if they'd made this Doctor Who, would have been down at the bottom of the sea faster, and I think the viewers would have preferred that.
I think it was believable. I think the diving bell scene was clearly a nod to the Sea Devils. It was a nod to the Third Doctor going down in the submersible for that one. I enjoyed the pace, particularly because you got those nice scenes slow as they were slowly descending, and you got to invest in those characters as they went down. I thought, oh, great! This is a team I feel like I could get to know and enjoy. So yeah, I like the pace of it. I think in terms of world building, I think if you're going to say, oh, it's set in the Whoniverse, I think there was a missed opportunity there because, okay, we saw some new creatures introduced in the first couple of episodes. And I thought, well, you could have even, a cheeky nod to what we've seen before in previous Doctor Who series. Could we perhaps see that world building? Could we see, a little cameo from a Silurian tribe or something like that? You could have really put that in there, and it wouldn't. Yes, it would have gone over general viewers' heads, but it would have been investment for the fan base and building people's enthusiasm in that. So I sort of felt a little bit disappointed in that respect. I think they could have, pushed it a little bit to expand on the world building.
Yeah. What about you, Goldie? I mean, I can't help, before we really let go of this, I can't help but think this could have been a brilliant 5-episode Doctor Who story. But if the Doctor character was there, certain things would have been faster paced. I take what Mark's saying, but Doctor Who's always forced the pace in other ways, and this is a moment when you think, actually, instead of all the preparation, which I found a bit like, let's get in the diving bell, let's get to this other world, and let's enjoy it. And the Doctor would have got us there faster, Goldie.
Yeah, I share the sentiments that a lot of this series, whether it's the characterization, the production quality, all of it should have been applied to the RTD2 era. And it seems like they've once again put more effort towards this spin-off than the actual show. At the same time, there are things that this show does very well because of the absence of the Doctor, like, for example, putting these very grounded human characters into these situations where the Doctor would have everything around his finger, like that. But with these characters, we can really see how they adapt and all their fears, and how they all have to team together because they're all reliant on each other. So yeah, I understand the sort of yin and yang of it, where there's a positive side to not having the Doctor there, because then you can see how a similar situation, like, as people were mentioning, this is very similar to the Sea Devils, but because we're seeing it from a different perspective, it does make for a very different story. But at the same time, you do wish that the quality of this show and the storytelling would have been applied to Doctor Who.
And we've got Funky, thank you very much. I've said it since the beginning. Kate's Toy Boy was calamari, just an episode earlier than I thought. I mean, they'd seeded Colonel Ibrahim as kind of the love interest. They'd done it in Doctor Who, and it was, to be honest, all you saw was he shared a bed with her once. In one of the episodes, then he does what I think women would normally call now mansplaining. He kept saying, "You're fatigued. Did you know that when you haven't slept for 48 hours, something happens to you?" And I thought, blooming hell, if I spoke like that, I'd be told off of mansplaining. Now that I'm going to keep muting various people just to see where this feedback's coming from. But Joe, wasn't Colonel I can't say it. Colonel Ibrahim, wasn't he mansplaining?
I guess he was, and I don't know. This is RTD, who the way he writes men and male characters. We had Russell cry in this episode and breaking down, and and then we've got this lad being super sensitive and listening to his woman, trying to understand her needs and giving her positive feedback. It's a very strange way of writing, and it didn't do the guy any favors. It didn't do. I mean, I guess for we to sort of feel he's, when he passes away, it's to be a heavier impact. It didn't have that, because this romance didn't fit in to me. It didn't. This sort of side story didn't really. It wasn't believable enough for a start as a couple, and I could never quite engage with those two. And they gave them some quite fundamentally sort of deep scenes, and there's a lot of attention spent on it. But I don't know if it paid off.
I know. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because I'm not going to go episode by episode. I could do that, but that's not the way. We were thrown 2 episodes tonight by BBC One, so I respond to the 2 episodes. So for those who didn't see it, Colonel Ibrahim does seem to kind of tell Kate Stewart how to be, how to look after her body, how to look after her mind, and he gives her mini little lectures, and he gives her little kind of sayings. And so, yeah, it was a funny one, really, because I thought, God, I mean, she's not listening to him anyway. And then he gets shot, and spoilers, he's not going to be seeing much of the universe after now. I don't know. I just thought, oh, God. I think there's an issue. Remember, this is our section, everybody, on just, I call it water torture. I call it what went round down the plug hole. So just to remind everybody, this is just We will be negative at the beginning before we then get a bit more positive. So just to remind everybody, this is the section we're doing here, yeah? Yeah, what went down the plug hole? What sank without a trace? So I suppose what Joe's just hinted at there, and I'll get the other two involved in what they think of this. I found it really interesting, Mark, that I wasn't too interested in a lot of the characters that in the diving bell. I mean, if you don't like spoilers, don't watch this show because we're gonna have to discuss what happened. But basically, those in the diving bell didn't really last, did they? So the diving bell crew, was I supposed to really miss them when they were gone? Salt and Barkley, am I supposed to really enjoy their relationship? Spoilers again. Kissing. Mark, am I supposed to really be bothered about this? I find that there's a weakness in the writing. I'm not really getting them.
I think the difficulty is that in the style of writing that they've pursued, it's very streamlined in how you invest in characters. You know, like you say, you got quite a lopsided sense of investing in all these new characters in the diving bell, only for them to be popped off right at the very end. And then counter to that, we're supposed to be invested in Colonel Ibrahim and Kate, but bear in mind, Colonel Ibrahim was introduced right at the start of the 60th anniversary. There's been plenty of occasions you could have developed that relationship with Kate a lot sooner, but all we got was in the reality war. You got kind of a nudge, nudge, wink, wink. We'll see each other after this has all been cleaned up. So it was really just a bullet point at the end of 2 series of Doctor Who, by which time it's like, well, is that isn't enough for me to really invest in those characters. I would have liked the slow burner. I would have liked to have seen that relationship come in a lot sooner, and there were the opportunities for that.
Yeah, I mean, I am finding it's the engagement thing. I can see what they're trying to do, Goldie. I can see in many ways where I'm supposed to be emotional. I just find it's just not pacing for me right. It's not written right. It's kind of, are there too many characters, Goldie? Am I just watching in too many directions? Am I bothered about the diving bell people? Am I bothered about Kate's relationship? Am I bothered that Shirley's taking over? Am I bothered about Barkley and his blended family? I mean, am I bothered about the Sea Devil world? Goldie, I feel as though, where do I go?
Well, I maintain that Kate is the worst aspect of this show, and to be fair, she's been the worst aspect of every single episode of Doctor Who she's appeared in, and that's to do with the writing, the acting, the whole job lot. So when the focus is on her, yes, my attention is elsewhere, because I just think she's very uninteresting. And I do feel like Colonel Ibrahim's departure feels very lackluster, because the show is intending to have you hooked on this character, but he really isn't doing much. And when he is, you don't really buy the whole dynamic. And so I feel like the intention was to have us, bawling our eyes out at the end of episode 3, but like, my thoughts are with everything else apart from him. I don't really care that much. The only things we've seen him do are just sort of stand about and say a few orders. We haven't really had a lot of time with him. But then if we did have time with him, then it would take away from all the other plot points. So it does feel like Kate and Ibrahim just should have been omitted from this series entirely.
I mean, Joe, I was getting sick of, weren't you getting sick of this? I hope you have never been in a work situation like this. If I'm supposed to really relate to Kate, they kept saying, Kate, you're exhausted. Kate, you're fatigued. Kate, you need a rest. Kate, you need to go home. Kate, you need this. This is for 2 episodes. And there was a bit of this in part 2. Joe, I was starting to think, what the heck?
Well, a lot of us are just starting to think, where's the friggin' war? We came here for a war, and all we're getting is endless dialogue, love scenes that are not quite hitting the mark. I mean, there's obviously a big emphasis on Kate, and I'm not sure why. It just doesn't really work. I don't even know what the point of pointing out she was tired was. There was a lot of dynamics because we've got unit going behind so and so's back. We've got governments. We've got the company. I was getting whiplash at one point trying to figure out what the heck, the who, the what, the where. Whose side am I on? I have no idea anymore.
Yeah. Mark, do you feel the same? I do feel torn between, and it's very hard to do this discussion in a way because you're going, do I talk about Kate? Do I talk about Barclay? Do I talk about Salt? Do I talk about the Diving Bell people? Do I talk about shit? I mean, I really, with Doctor Who, there's a clarity, or there used to be, by the way, before New Who. And I'm missing that because I'm just thinking of the general punter, Mark. They must be so confused in which direction to go.
I think the difficulty is that, you know, whether you like the character or you loathe the character, Kate Lethbridge Stewart, she's a legacy character. She's come through many series, and you know, some might be more invested in that character than others. But like you say, I think you're torn in seeing her mostly as the she should be the principal lead of the series, but no, you brought in another new lead character with Russell Tovey's character, and she's sidelined to be the secondary character. And I sort of feel it that way. Yeah, you are a bit sort of, well, where am I looking here? Am I being asked to invest in new characters, or am I being asked to invest in Kate's established character? And yeah, I think in that respect, it does get a little bit confusing. Where am I looking here?
And Goldie, I really did find with Kate Stewart while we're on her, and I know you're not impressed, the dialogue again that Joe's talking about. We had dialogue saying, Kate, you're so amazing, but you're not invincible. I've heard this before. In Doctor Who, you're amazing. Rose Tyler, you're amazing. Everybody who's ordinary is amazing. And now we were getting told that Kate Stewart's amazing. And I'm thinking, as Mark said, when have we seen her be amazing?
Yeah, it does feel like a forced effort to make her more relatable, but you can't. It feels like they've gone to the end point without putting any of the work. We haven't really had any proper time to be invested in her character, because every time we see her in Doctor Who, she's just a stone-faced leader with no personality. There's no flaws to her character. She's less of a character and just more of a representative of UNIT. And even though that's who her character is, she should be an actual character underneath that. We've never seen that. So this episode feels like, right, okay, we realize we haven't given Kate any characterization. Let's just throw that all in 10 minutes and boom, you'll have to love her now. And we're like, no, we don't, because it's not gradual. It hasn't been natural. We haven't connected with her.
Yeah, I take your point. I've been trying to fathom what they were trying to do with that. With the underwater world and with the Sea Devils, I have to say, I'm going to have to start with something that I've been irritated by for a while, which is the messaging, because I thought there was quite a little bit in this one. So if you don't mind for a moment, since we're underwater torture, and this is the negative bit, the kind of, what the hell was happening here, I will start with, was the message okay? Is the message coming through loud and clear? Are we okay on the message? So here we go.
This is how we see Davros now.
But they choked on your oil and poison and excrement.
We cannot allow a foreign species to dictate this is dangerous.
50% reduction by 2065. Oh my God.
God, scary stuff. So the message, Joe, was the message okay? Was it loud and clear? Were you getting what you needed to get from this? Because part 1 and 2, we had a lot about the poo and the excrement and everything else, and the Wombles should have done a better job. But what were you getting from this, and did it work, or was it aggravating you?
It was far too dialogue heavy. I mean, usually I've got a fairly, you know, I can follow most things I watch, and I honestly was starting to just not be able to keep together what the heck was going on. It's definitely in episode 4, and I'm waiting on this war coming. Even the underwater scenes, I found they were very dark. I know that's a technique in VFX to sort of hide a lot of sins, and they did have a big job on their plate. But the message, we're just so used to so many messages. We're just like, no, I was bombarded, and all I got was white man's bad, white man government's bad, white man business is bad, and we've got an assassin, he's bad. Russell Tovey's not bad because he's having fish sex, so he's fine. That's what I got.
Yeah,
I'm just in a wobbler tonight, and I was really kind of let down because we've got one episode to go.
Yeah.
And I'm not invested. I'm a little confused. And the strange thing is, despite having a good old moan about it, I still feel it. I wish Doctor Who had been more like this. So I'm in a really funny mindset right now because although I didn't like it, Doctor Who could have really done with a bit more of whatever it is this has, which maybe the panel or chat could sort of clarify a bit for me, because I'm feeling quite whiplashed after that.
Yeah, I mean we've had some breakneck speed New Who for 2 seasons, for good or bad. You know, I'm keeping out of that for now. People know where I stand. But now we've come into this 5-episode world builder where we can take our time. Now, I asked about the message. Now, Mark, this is what I've got down for my messaging, so to speak, right? So let's have a look here. I've got the West are, you know, they're always colonized and plundered. And I thought, do you know what? Do Pete McTighe and RTD know their history? Which centuries are we talking about? Because actually, most of the world has done bad to each other. But anyway, the West are colonizers and plunderers, and that was it. And the Far East and everywhere else, yeah. I've mentioned Ibrahim mansplaining, but on top of that, though, it made Kate look toxic. Like a toxic female, by the way. We've had toxic masculinity. She's been curt, she's been rude. If she is being a bad manager, and ignoring protocol, that's bad managing. That's not a hero. So she's very toxic because you can't tell her to go home. She obviously really. So I just thought, while you're trying to make her a hero, this is really toxic femininity. Actually, you're showing me. All men are wimps, apart from the colonel who went down the diving bell. And I had an almost anti-human sentiment in the plot. Except right near the end when you saw Tide, and Tide obviously is a bit iffy as well. So, Mark, there you go.
Well, I think Tide should have been renamed Vinegar. But in terms of the message, I think that message got well and truly buried under all that plastic from last week. In fact, where was that plastic from last week? You know, for all that time that we spent in the diving bell, you never saw the consequence of, apart from, oh yeah, we're going to blow the Sea Devils up. You never saw the human, what's the human consequence of that? How are people dealing with all this plastic that's been dumped on their doorstep? That's conveniently gone with, obviously they ran out of money to do the effects of, you know, a cityscape buried in plastic. That kind of got swept aside, really. And in terms of the anti-human rhetoric, one thing I did reflect on watching those 2 episodes, yes, in Doctor Who, it does point out human flaws, human failings, but it comes in a roundabout kind of way. You have the Doctor shining a light on humanity and saying you have potential to be better, rather than in this one, which is like you're just being constantly told you're wrong, you're bad. We know we're bad. We know what human failings are, but you need some hope in there, and at the moment there isn't a lot of hope.
Well, you've got, I mean, I'll come back to you quickly, Mark, on this, but Funky, thank you very much. Kate needs to go to Wentley Moor last episodes. Oh God, I'm Kate Stewarted out. I really am. And thank you also, if I can just, thank you, Farsight. Are the Sea Devils playing second fiddle to Salt? Well, of course, they're not Sea Devils, of course. Hallelujah. The Homer Aqua, there's not many Homer Aqua in it. There's CGI, there's Tide, there's her, and that's it really. And now, I don't know. It's the classic case of RTD era. We go from one or two people to CGI, and there's nothing in between. And sometimes you're thinking, well, don't even bother with all the CGI. Just let me get to know these ones who are real. So thank you, you two. But Mark, I was going to come back to you as well on the speed of it, because you were saying that. I mean, it feels like to me that I don't know. It's I feel as though they're trying to slow down bits. Like part 3 was really preparation and process leading to an assassination attempt, but it was a long episode for just preparation. Part 2 was court scene. I feel as though they've sat there with their plot and they've gone, we want the Sea Devils and we want a message and we want this. Now, how do we stretch it out over 5 episodes? Do we do this? And we go there, then we go there, then we go there, then we resolve it. It feels like that. And actually padding. And then sometimes a bit of a rush. And it just feels so kind of strangely paced. I find it interesting, Mark, that they're actually rushing bits, then slowing down bits. I'll give you one example. The fireside chat. I mean, we had a fireside chat with Kate and Ibrahim, and I was like, and we had the fireside chat between Salt and Barkley, and I was so uninterested, so unengaged. And do you know what, Joe, Mark and Goldie? When I saw the fireside chat in some warehouse somewhere between Salt and Barkley, I was back to Last of the Time Lords. I was back to Captain Jack and the Doctor and Martha on the run. And I thought, we've done this before. It's always an episode where there have to be fugitives and go low and go subterranean, go subway. Here we go again. Mark, am I being fair or am I being just in a bad mood?
Well, you read my mind, actually, because my notes earlier said, are we using the same warehouse that we used in Last of the Time Lords? It looked like a carbon copy of that, so we're on the same page with that one. It goes back to what I said last week. You know, if you think back to the original concept of the Silurians and the Sea Devils, in the Silurians in particular, yes, they were creatures, yes, they were alien, but you got different versions, different personalities. This series seems very lopsided. You know, you it's a lot of the soap opera stuff, but I would have liked to have seen. I think somebody touched on it last week. It would have been nice to invest more in that other world, get to know some of the characters and personalities in those other worlds. Yes, you got this character Tide coming in all of a sudden, but where's he come from? Where's he been hiding? Where's the relationships and the dynamics on the opposite side of the fence? We don't get any of that.
And Goldie, I know you've waited patiently there, but Goldie, I mean, you've heard bits and bobs. Take your pick on what you want to discuss. But I mean, I showed in the message, you know, you had the Salt turn into a male version of herself in, you know, part 2. Is that going to have payoff? That just seemed to appear. We've had, as Mark said, all the litter seems to have disappeared, but that's the convenience of RTD and Pete McTighe. You know, in Star Beast, we had all the planet was cracking to pieces and suddenly it was healed and all the potholes gone. And, you know, there's all that going on. So, Goldie, take your pick.
Well, I'm actually on the other side of the fence when it comes to the messaging for the most part. There are some lines, like, for example, the male presenting, and there's reference to a certain replacement, So there are a couple of lines like that where I am going, ugh. But how I've described this series is, if you take away the messaging, the very forced social commentary, there is still a story there. Whereas with Doctor Who, you take away the message, the show is gone, because it is the message they have combined. But I feel with this series, apart from a few lines, there is actually a good story there to be invested in. And actually, I am on the other side as well when it comes to this idea of the show just presenting humans as being bad, and that's the whole message of the show. And I think that's kind of an ignorant approach to the theme, because how I viewed the series, and these past 2 episodes have solidified that more, is it's less about humans bad, sea devils good, and it's more about the individuals of certain groups versus the collective. And in episode 4 shows that very well, because you have 2 people, both from different species. You have Salt from the Sea Devils and Barclay from the humans, and they've both gone against the wishes of their main collective, and now they're fugitives. So it's not a case of humans bad, Sea Devils good. It's a case of, right, we're focusing on the individuals and how they're fighting against the collective narrative of their groups, and that's why we get connected with these characters. But also, and I did have a feeling before the show began, and RTD and Peter McTeague were referencing the idea of a romance between these 2, and everyone kind of assumed so as well. And I've said this series is a bit of kind of like a sci-fi Romeo and Juliet, where you have these 2 people from warring factions, and then they both come together because they see in each other things that their respective sides do not see in others. And there's a nice scene between Barclay and Salt where Barclay does say, oh, well, us humans are just terrible. And Salt goes, no, actually, you guys are very inventive. You guys have explored the stars, and we were so afraid and we were so scared to do anything that we just stayed beneath the ocean. So it is quite complimentary towards humans and their experiences and how they've progressed. So I do think it is quite fair and nuanced, actually.
Well, I'll go back up the panel again, but I'll start with you, Goldie, to be fair, because you've just warmed up on this. I mean, Goldie, are you convinced from what you've seen? I take you saying they're all individuals and that. Although I have to say, I've got questions like, since when did the British Prime Minister just meet an American general and a French general and never meets his cabinet? What the hell's going on there? This is logic blown apart just for the sake of plot. But Goldie, I can't. I know you're saying that they saw something in each other. This is Salt and Barclay. She saved him from the assassination attempt, knowing she was against her own people then and would be, ostracized forever. He doesn't know what the hell's going on. He doesn't know why she likes him. And then suddenly we have to have the kissy scene. And they seem to be now risking everything for each other, but I haven't seen any mileage. And the other thing I wanted to come back on, Goldie, when you were talking about, you see the good and bad on both sides. She was a cold fish in part 2. She was like Queen, what's her name of Naboo? She was all like, the way she talked, it was all hello and I am on and on and on. And she was all very kind of monotone and a pain in the neck. And then suddenly she's all over him like a rash. I mean, Goldie, are you convinced by this?
I do see your point in the contradiction between perhaps how she is presented in episodes 2 and 3. And I think it's kind of a thing of, you either buy it and you sort of buy the spirituality of the romance, or you don't, particularly if that's not your sort of thing to be invested in the soap opera elements. But you did remind me of something I did want to touch upon, but I did forget, which is also relating to Kate and how she breaks down. And I've already acknowledged that as a character, she's very weak and shouldn't have been in this. But I think it's less to do with mansplaining and less to do with her being a toxic leader, and it's more about how these big events, these big crises, break down the systems of power and how we see people struggling to find solutions, which also links to everything to do with the businessmen and the foreign governments, which is the whole corruption angle of it. It's people wanting to benefit themselves over everyone else. And that's something that, again, the series has touched upon very well. It's showing how these situations are taken advantage of and how people manipulate the power structures to benefit themselves more than others. And so I do think that it's done very well, apart from, again, a few lines. But I think you can trim those lines off, and there's still something of substance there to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. Before we move on, I mean, Joe, how are you convinced by this relationship and their motivations?
I clocked this the minute I saw the redesign. I knew where RTD was going with this. I think I mentioned it like immediately. They're going to get it on. That's why he's redesigned them. It looks sexy. So I knew that was coming. What I didn't really, it was jumbled because they have this moment of, oh, I've known you forever, which in Doctor Who would probably mean we've got a bit of a story coming up and they have known each other and there's a reincarnation thing, or there's a big, there's a huge thing going on behind that. Whereas here, I'm not so sure, but it very quickly was like off to a side room. I feel like I've known you forever, madly in love. And it was just too abrupt. And then we've got this messy dynamic with his ex-wife, because it looked like they were kind of almost in love again. That's a kind of messy little situation. So it's just badly approached. I mean, we should be rooting for these two, right? Essentially the sort of Romeo and Juliet here. And I'm not really rooting for them. And I think they maybe needed to spend more time on their dynamic together. I don't know, but it's got a lot of good ideas, but they're not quite sort of emotionally bringing us in, and they're not really landing it. I'd like to know if they do have some crazy karmic connection. And then they said something really naff at the end, like, you'll never swim alone. You'll never swim alone. And I'm just like, my son just got off. He got up and said, I'm not watching it next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said, that's him done.
This is interesting, by the way. If anyone doesn't know, Joe's son, Gabe Haya, is 15 and now, and he's a great Doctor Who fan, but he had his cut-off point. So he's watched 4 episodes, and what you think he's cut off now from this? What's disengaged him completely? What's really done it for him?
He didn't care what the outcome is. He doesn't care what happens. It's been so gobbledygook. We've got this corporation, we've got government, we've got all this stuff with Kate. It's all a bit disjointed. I was feeling a bit whiplashed from it. And, my son and I enjoy watching telly and sort of discussing it together. And at the end of it, he was right. He's disconnected from it. There was nothing to want him to come back next week. We don't know we've got one more episode for this whole entire war to happen.
Now, I will say something before I do forget. And it kind of links with what Funky's saying here. Thank you very much. Because you say, my big difficulty is that Barclay's in charge of taxis. But look at units' own vehicles. Why do they need taxis? My big issue, we're still on the big issues thing, because if you've got big issues, you need to list them. Security. I'm sorry. We all go through airport security. To get in that diving bell, nobody checked that he was carrying a bomb. Unit are crap. Unit didn't check out the buildings opposite where Kate Stewart lives. They're all apartments with glass. Nobody checked. So, danger there. So that they don't check if Sutek is on the top of the TARDIS when it lands. They don't check the bomb in the diving bell. So airport security, if you've got more than 100 millilitres of water, you're a criminal. But my God, you can carry a bomb on. Barclay grabbing the truck. Part of the plot, everybody, if you haven't seen it, is Barclay just grabs a unit truck. There's unit soldiers everywhere. They've captured Salt. She's a prisoner of war. Oh, the language is good. And then all of a sudden he just says, well, I used to be in charge of taxis and transport, so I'm just going to grab this vehicle. then reverses it into the river, and she just happens to come flying out. Honestly, it just goes on. So units, my God, they're crap. And then letting Kate Stewart stay in charge. Shirley, everybody, Shirley, she's like a Spock. She's the number 2. She suddenly becomes the number 1. So as soon as Kate Stewart's compromised, she's wheeling and dealing. She's like Charlton and the Wheelies. So basically, she's in charge, and she never said, "You've got to go home." Nobody says, "Kate Stewart, you've got to go home." As in, they never carry it through. They never report her. They never reported Russell Tovey in part 1. I could go on about how rubbish unit security is, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're supposed to believe with this more adult spin-off that we're grounded in reality. And I go back to your point, Brendan, that you said about Salt's character completely flips from the first 2 episodes where she's, cold fish.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to build diplomacy with another species, if we're meant to believe they're the most enlightened species that came before us, what does it say about their diplomacy skills that they're just going to dump a load of rubbish on our doorstep and think that that's the right way to go about it? Then all of a sudden, the very next week, let me show you around our pad here, and let me be deep and meaningful with you about what we really do think about humans, and what inspirations they are. Could she not have said that in episode 1 or 2? She saved it for a very self-centered moment with a human that she's supposedly attracted to. And I think those 2 characters, I kind of think, well, you've come into this being told on both sides, you're probably the fate of our 2 species rest on your shoulders, and all of a sudden we're being told about how good your fins look. You got very nice fins, and you get these very slapstick, really bad Christmas cracker jokes thrown in. Where did that come from?
And by the way, while everybody, if you haven't watched it, it's still a Pete McTighe script. RTD's back its script next week, so this is Pete McTighe. He might be the showrunner in the future. And I think he's got. I can honestly say I think Pete McTighe has an issue with pacing, clearly, because a lot of his episodes, Praxius and everything, I have had a problem with pacing. It just feels as though he's got the set. He's got messaging, he's got lots of characters, he's got this world he wants to build, but I just think he doesn't blend it. He's good with season 21 trailers that last 3 minutes. I just don't think this works. Goldie, is there anything you want to pick up on from what we've been saying in the last few minutes?
Not in particular. Just again, I can understand on an objective level why some people have issue with the whole romance between Barclay and Salt, because again, it's a common thing in Russell T Davies' shows where he takes a big sci-fi premise and then he injects current day things, and he injects human relations into everything where perhaps they don't need to be. But subjectively, I'm fine with it. It's a bit cringe, but I think that's kind of intentional in the humor between them. I'm willing to to stand aside from everyone else and not say that I'm right in doing so. I just feel a little bit differently about it. But what I will say is episode 3 in particular does kind of justify the whole DEI stuff, even though I'm of course against all this forced, representation. Let's just, present things as they are. And let's present them, falsely. But episode 3 does give us the premise of, because this has affected the whole world, there's all these different countries that are coming together to negotiate with the Sea Devils, and they all want to have their own little moment to talk with the Sea Devils and have their own negotiations. So the fact that each member of the team is from a different background, that does kind of make sense, considering that each country would put forth their own ambassador and delegate. So that's the one time where it does work and it does make sense within the context of the story. Other times, perhaps not. But episode 3 does handle that aspect much better.
Yeah, we've had 4 episodes, and I will say part 1 just about does it, and part 3 in part, although I would have played around with, I would have got rid of those first 12 minutes and just got into the diving bell. Because actually the normal punters out there, if they were really engaged from a week ago, ended with the cliffhanger where he's got to go down into their world. So start by just getting into that world. Why are we having to say, oh, he's got to go for swimming lessons and he's got to have a word with his ex-wife? Who cares? It's your ex-wife. You know, yeah, the maintenance will be sorted out. Bug off. Who cares? Boring. So chucking the rubbish back would have been seen as a hostile action. Farsight, I think you can't win with these bloody Homer Aqua. I tell you what, because may I say, while I'm still on water torture, and I am a Doctor Who fan, in the Sea Devils 1972, when we did have the diving bell moment, they were very helpful, the Sea Devils. They had them little yellow pods that actually got you to their world. This time they made you do it all yourself, and then just at the end you got... Do you know what? In 1972, the Sea Devils were nicer. The Sea Devils actually said, you know, they just grabbed you. Now they say, right, we need a whole episode with Disney budget for you to get down to us, but we're doing nothing about it. We built pipes for them. We knocked down half of London to build them an Aqua Wet and Wild splash and go. We built stuff for them, and we've got no money left in Britain, and we built all that. Meanwhile, we've got to find our own way to them. That seemed a bit weird to me. So that's that was my little rant about what the hell's going on here. Funky, I have a worry. Oh, only one. That the recent McGann filming leaks may be a last-minute cameo in this to replace either a Shooty or Joe Martin one. If I went round the panel for a second, I heard Jamie, my partner, shout this out, and I just wonder, Joe, I'll come to you first, and then I'll ask Mark quickly and Goldie quickly. I, as well as Jamie, have an inkling that we're going to get the Master in the end of episode 5.
That's very interesting. But you know what? It's going to complicate it even more because we're going to have the Master, Billy Piper flying about, Tennant in the back garden. What a friggin' mess! Oh, sorry. Although, you know what? It would probably cheer me up to see the Master. But what Master? What form?
I know, and it was just because there was some bits of dialogue in the episode that just made you think the Master's coming back. Mark, what's your thoughts? What do you think the big reveal is going to be at the end of episode 5? Now you've seen 4 episodes, because we've been told to watch out for the music at the end of the credits of episode 5. There'll be something we recognise, and so I'm guessing something's going to be revealed. Have you got any guesses?
I haven't really given it much thought, and I think given where, unfortunately, I think given where episode 4 went to, do I have a care what happens at the end of episode 5? I'll watch it. But yeah, I'm disappointed with the way it's kind of nosedived the last episode, I'm afraid. So I'll watch it, and I will remain open-minded. But yeah, as far as teasers about end credits, and if the Master does appears, am I really bothered?
Am I really bothered? You sound like Catherine Tate. Am I really bothered? Goldie, do you think we're going to get a reveal of something that is linked with Doctor Who?
I actually think there's a 0% chance that there's going to be any sort of Master reveal or anything to do with that. I think the BBC have separated this show enough from Doctor Who that I don't think there's going to be anything revealed in a post-credit scene. And someone mentioned something to do with Paul McGann filming. I have no clue about that, but if I had to guess, it will be because next year marks the 30th anniversary of the TV movie, so maybe they're doing a short little segment to go along with a potential re-release of that. So I don't think it has anything to do with this show, to be honest.
Yeah, and there were interviews done by a podcaster today where Paul McGann's just saying all that AI nonsense as well, and he's dismissing all that stuff as well. Can I just say before we move on, and we do want to be positive too. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. I mean, they thought 2 episodes at us, but just before we move on to another segment, and I'll come to you again, Joe. First, Joe, this feminized world of units, this feminized prism I'm looking through that sci-fi likes to do now, I am finding that a little bit painful.
It's absolutely ridiculous, and it's so contrived now. Everyone just, we just like have to let out a huge sigh every time you see it. It's just pathetic. Come on. I mean, equality would mean we have men and women. Unit is an absolute mess. I mean, one minute we've got tiny teenagers on roller things, and we've got, I mentioned this before. We had Donna's child. They've disappeared. Where is that big alien machine? What was it called?
The big links.
That made quite. When I first saw that, I thought, what have we got here? Where did that come from? How's that? What is the story here? And it's went nowhere. And yet again, he's made such a mess of it. And I don't think, I mean, I'm sorry, Shirley, but it's almost comedic when there was something that she asked that there was a sort of is she not meant to be the chief science officer?
Yeah.
Because there was a very simple thing, and she actually didn't know what it was, and it came across really stupid.
Yes, it was the explosion. It was the
There
explosion.
was something sonic. Now, surely she would have understood that. She didn't need to. It's just so badly flung together, and I mean, I got sick of it with Marvel as well. They did this with the women are better at everything nonsense, and I'm just so over it.
It's
but
just,
will they listen to us? Will they listen to us? Would they dare put? They're not going to put a white dude in charge of unit again, are they? I think those days are over. So, I think you white guys are on the way out.
it had that Star Trek Discovery vibe to me, where it was basically, I've always joked, but I'm not far off, where you get 2 female characters for some reason in the middle of a war zone on the Enterprise, and they start saying, they big each other up saying, I'm really proud of you, and you haven't got your fella, and you're doing really well, and I love you, and you've lost weight, and I'm thinking, why are we doing this? It's sci-fi, for Christ's sake. If you want to do that sort of stuff, get on Emmerdale fast. But honestly, sci-fi is normally a bit pacey with stuff. We don't, am I right, everybody? In sci-fi, we don't tend to want to wallow in all the PTSD stuff. That's for a kind of different genre. Am I right or am I wrong? I might be after
Stoicism was one of Doctor Who's greatest strengths, this stoic nature he had. And arguably that's what I admire in men, was a bit of that stoic, and they've really actively tried to pull stoicism away from men. That grin and bear it and keep the world held together. And I think it's an absolutely brilliant thing, and it's been an absolute attempt to just dismantle that aspect of men, and I wonder why.
Yeah, I don't get it. I'll come to Mark in a moment. I'll just read out Rob Fellow's comment. I've still heard nothing discussed about compelling plot or character, sci-fi ideas, scary or exciting moments. Now, what I'm going to do, Rob, this is our first section, water torture. The next section is big splash. So I promise you might hear some elements that are worth looking at. I don't know. I haven't asked the panel, that we came flying on. So, Mark, just on the issue about the feminization of sci-fi, and whether the making very emotional sci-fi, whether I don't know. It's not me, Mark. Is it you?
I mean, obviously, I'm going a little bit askew from War Between the Land and the Sea here, but if you're talking about, say, for example, you had the Doctor regenerating into a woman, I feel since Russell T Davies came back, it feels as if the character development of a character like that has sort of fallen by the wayside, and it's like, oh, I'm broken and I'm tortured, so I need to split myself off in a bi regeneration and work on my emotional. I'm a broken man, all that. Whereas you look at Jodie Whittaker's version of the Doctor, you had a character who, by the end of it, said, I have loved being this character. I love being this character. And we love that character. Whether you like Jodie Whittaker or not, we like the character. But yeah, it just feels like, well, let's just chuck all that out the window, and the Doctor will never progress. He'll never become a better person, man or woman. So yeah, and yeah, I think, like everybody said about War Between the Land and the Sea, who are we invested in here? Are we invested in Salt's character who flips from being a cold fish in one episode to being quite warm and seductive in another episode, and all of a sudden we're meant to be involved in Kate's relationship that was just a bullet point at the very end of the last series of Doctor Who?
Oh, they call it seeds, don't they? We've seeded it for later, and you think, no, you haven't. You haven't watered it. You've got Robert Payne here. Barclay was crying and had a scream in the pool. I've got it down in my big splash section, Robert. As in, if I was going to be trying to be positive, I thought cinematically, it was an amazing moment to see a character screaming but silently in water. Do you know what I mean? There was something like it. I thought, well, it's interesting what you're trying to do. But yeah, we've got Kate having a kind of fatigue, nervous breakdown, and now she's going to have bereavement. We've got a rubbish prime minister who's getting torn apart by invested parties. Barclay crying his eyes out, I think 3 times in the 2 parts. Nothing against crying, but I'm just trying to work out where we're going with this. We just seem to be all over. Goldie, I know you end up being our panelist who picks up the pieces from what you've heard, but from what you've heard, what do you want to explore?
It is very noticeable when you look at an organization like UNIT and you see all the major positions of power are filled by women, and that's non-negotiable. I don't really see how anyone could deny that. That absolutely is the case, and that is something which, again, you do let out a little sigh every time you see, even if you don't have a massive problem with it. It is noticeable because you see it in everything nowadays. At the same time, I think the main problem is the lack of balance. I don't think that all of that needs to be entirely removed. Like, for example, as Robert Payne brought up, I actually think one of the best moments of the first episode was with Barclay breaking down, because again, I personally don't see it as let's feminize a male character. I view it as the show trying to show us the effects that all of this is having on all the main characters. And that scene actually reminded me of the scene with Mel Gibson in Signs at the dinner table where he's breaking down. It's a very similar type of premise where you have a human who has no extraordinary abilities and he's having to reassure his family that everything is going to be okay when he knows that there's a good chance it isn't. And it's worse for Barclay because he's been assigned as the ambassador, and for all intents and purposes, he is in charge of over 6 billion lives. And I imagine that pressure would have an effect on someone. But at the same time, because every season of Doctor Who for the past 10 years has been present day Earth, let's introduce all this soap opera, it does get overbearing. I think if Doctor Who had been more escapist over the past 10 years, then something like this wouldn't really bother us because it would be a deviation from the norm. But because this is just another chapter in a long line of current day soap operas from Doctor Who, that's why it gets very annoying. So I do think that, and once again, I'm sure everyone in the chat will agree, we need just a new vision for Doctor Who. I'm fine with this existing as its own thing, but what this is, well, as Joe said, elements of this should absolutely be what Doctor Who should be, but then there are other parts where it shouldn't be because it's very different from Doctor Who. But what we need is we need Doctor Who in the future to be entirely different from this, because something like this could be effective if it was just its own thing, but it's existing alongside Doctor Who, and there are loads of elements from Doctor Who, like the soap opera stuff, and it just becomes so homogenized. And what we really need is we need some distinct stories, but everything just sort of blends into one.
Yeah. Now, what I'm going to do before we move on to the next section is I'll go around the panel again a bit more breakneck. So, Joe first. Is there any, to be fair, is there a male character in this who stands out as decent?
Oh, I mean, of course, Russell Tovey's character, I mean, he's carrying it very well. I like him as an actor, and I'm a little bit confused about where he's going and things like that, but that's down to the writing. Do you know what? That's a really good question, Brendan, because it is pointing out something. I mean, he's the only one that's coming to mind. There's tons of, obviously, we've got, the corrupt bad guys. They all sort of blend into one homogenous suit, if I'm not paying attention, because I really had to pay attention to that last episode to try and just hang on in there to what was bouncing around. I'm still not even entirely sure who is behind trying to take out Kate. But yeah, sorry, to get back to the point, I'm quite happy with him as a lead in this. I don't think he's served well, and there's a lot of naff bits, and they're making him, this guy's got a lot on his shoulder. He's got the whole future of the world on his shoulder, so they are showing that quite well emotionally, and I think they've just taken on too much to put into one character.
Yeah.
So I'm not answering it very well, am I? But
No,
the other men look like a suit to me. There's just a load of suits everywhere, and Russell Tovey.
Yeah. So the same question, I'll go to the two lads, but I'll give you a second to think. So basically, it was just so those who haven't seen it or are just wondering, since I mentioned this over emotional side, possibly. So I'm going to ask about is there a male character that really stands out to you as a role model, so to speak? So I'll just show you this first.
Hello again.
We will take questions from the ambassador.
Well, take your pick. So, Mark, are there any male characters that do stand out as a role model?
I would agree with Joe. I would say that Russell Tovey is a great performer. I think he is performing this particular character, Barclay, really well, but he is let down by the writing. He's let down by the writing because you're invested in this character to make the right decisions and get to the right destination. But when that character does something really quite he's doing it for Salt, for getting her out of a particular situation, but then it gets very self-centered. You're not thinking about the world, humanity, when you're being very deep and meaningful in a warehouse that we've seen before. I think, unfortunately, I would have expected the character. Yeah, that character could have taken risks, but not silly risks. I feel that where it's gone is gone to Silly Town, really. So in terms of role models, I mean, he was. I take Goldie's point that at the start, the emotional depth that he showed towards his family was great. And just we forget that in that first episode, we were meant to believe that he had some level of faith in the way that he showed compassion towards the dead sea devil that was strung up in a crucifixion style way. Where did that all go to? That would have been really nice to explore faith and belief and things like that, but that was just that was sidelined.
I mean, Goldie, the problem I've got, I mean, I know people are saying, well, Barclay's the complex character and he's the lead. So, you know, look how caring he is about his family, how caring he is with Salt, how he's trying to hold the world together. But Goldie, I don't feel as though the script has set me up to really truly believe that. Because one minute he's humble and modest in part one. Remember, I'm an accident, I think I've had one as well. And then, you know, he suddenly turns his head on Kate and says, you need me. You need me. And I'm thinking, oh, you've gone to Mr. Ballsy suddenly. One minute you're wetting your pants, and the next minute, Mr. Ballsy bloke. And the next minute, he's really taking on, you know, he's in the diving bell. I'm having another wet accident. And then he flips again, and he gets very strong with his language, and he gets very kind of defiant. We are pioneers, and he does all this. Which version, Goldie? Because I don't think this is. I can't believe in him as an actual real person. It's been written in such a way.
Yeah, there are certainly moments where his characterization does jump, and I've noticed this. I don't know if anyone else has, but there are quite a lot of time jumps in these episodes, and they aren't something that get highlighted a lot. But like at the start of episode 3, we see them going to the institute where they're going to be training, and there's a big training montage where they're doing all sorts of activities. So, you know, as much as we know, it could have been a few months or something. So there's these big gaps of our characters adapting to these situations, and we don't really get to see all that development play out. And like in the first episode, we go from Barclay being the civilian who's just witnessing all the events because apparently that's something that unit does, and then they establish contacts at that big building, and we see this big montage of them lifting up all these pipes and assembling the entire piece, and that must be a few weeks as well. And after that point, we see him go to the ex-wife and says, "Oh, I'm transferring funds between my account to yours. Oh, I can send you 10,000 or something." So he's, as you've said, a bit more cocky. So there's obviously these big jumps in the story, and it feels like they want Barclay to be a type of character, and they've jumped to that point without doing a lot of the legwork in between at points. That is an objective flaw of the writing and also the pacing.
Yeah, and we might come to that. So we've had a good go at actually the 2 episodes regarding niggles and negatives and stuff like that. And I do want to be balanced. It's just we segment it. So this is the big splash section. Okay, and in the big splash section, I suppose we need to be a little bit more upbeat. I'm going to have to think of how we can do that. How can we do that? Plastic winning, I mean, that isn't that a good thing? So the big splash is meant to us to show balance. So hello Joe. So Joe, you'll have made a load of notes, like I know all the panelists are. Look at all these notes, look at this. So Joe, on the big splash, something, you know, with your production head on, or with your viewer head on, or with your mother head on, or with just your, you know, what did you think worked?
I have really enjoyed things like the design of the monsters, you know, is really good. I've really enjoyed the quality. That there just seemed to be a bit of a jump in the quality, and I think the team behind who've created the aqua people are brilliant. And I actually wish we saw more of the other aqua species, because they did sort of give us a couple of glimpses. And she mentioned there was more, you know, that there was other species down there. There's a lot more going on down there that we don't know about, which is sad. we've not explored more of that, because it is interesting. And I am quite engaged in knowing more about their world and what's going on there. I'd love to know much more about them. So I've enjoyed that part of it. I've also enjoyed RTD not having a writing team who are all activists, because I think that's a little bit why we're seeing better content here, because that last season of Doctor Who, every episode had a sort of activist core to it, and it's been really nice to just see a return to sort of, okay, we're getting a message. If RTD's involved right now, we're going to get it hammered on us. But it's milder with this show, and I feel like we've got. My son mentioned that if this wasn't a Doctor Who associated program, he'd like it more, which was an interesting comment. So it's got elements that really are quite strong enough to stand on its own and go somewhere. So that's got to be a positive, right?
Yeah, well, as I comes down to Mark, Peter Harrington here. It's a shame the Sea Devils home at Aqua themselves are more background. Maybe it's just my yearning for the originals. Squinty Mint, I preferred Balfour's score to Murray Gold's stuff. Yeah, I take your point. There's a different vibe to it, and that makes it very cinematic. I just wanted to show before we moved on. Joe was mentioning about the home at Aqua and the different worlds there. These were the Sea Devil masks, or the home Aqua masks, that they actually decided not to go with. Just to give you an idea that they've done an awful lot of thinking about whether to go prosthetic or more as a costume and all the rest of it. Very interesting, the amount of effort that goes in. And maybe they made a good decision in what they did, maybe, or was it too humanoid? You know? But I suppose the big element is, would you want to kiss one of them? That's the thing. Would you really want to kiss one of them? I mean, which one, Mark? Number 1, number 2, or number 3? Which one are you going to snog?
Which one to snog, marry, or avoid?
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I mean, I did see that behind the scenes stuff on the development of the Sea Devil aesthetic. And I have to say, the one that they did land on, I think probably was the best one to go for. And it probably is a lot better than, I think, the little bit of gripe I have in recent series is that you had very humanoid looking Silurians that detracted from the original premise of the Sea Devils and the Silurians. And I think they harken back to that with the proper Sea Devil looking Sea Devils in this one. I think really the good points that I've seen in this is, you know, there was always that joke that the original series unit, it was the invasion of the home counties, whereas I think you saw the production values in this of, you know, unit is global, and there is there's the naval force there, and you got Chinook helicopters everywhere. That felt real and believable at that point. So yeah, I think the production values in that respect really did step up the mark.
I mean, as I come to you, Goldie, I'm just bringing out Funky for being very generous. I'm slightly annoyed that episode 4, The Witch of the Waterfall, and I must admit, what a phrase, The Witch of the Waterfall. That title had me intrigued, and in the end, it was a bit of dialogue about going to North Wales. Who cares? Seems similar to a script I wrote with a mate, but with less kissing. Have to say, Funky, you're not the first to say this. My sources said it. I've had various people who've said, you have a little chat with RTD, suddenly it ends up on screen. Yeah, be very careful. You might be onto something there, Funky. Sorry to hear that, because, you know, an idea is worth money, as Joe knows from being in the industry. So, Goldie, coming to you. Big impressions? Anything that really stood out for you?
When Barclay said that he has a friend in North Wales who could help them, I was half expecting RCD to turn up himself. But no, the big praise I have for these two episodes, as with the other episodes, is Dylan Holmes Williams. His directing is absolutely phenomenal. I've loved how the framing of this series has been done. I've loved the quality. It's really sold this epic scale feel to it. It's like in episode 3 when we see the big arrangement of ships coming out towards the center of the ocean. That was brilliant shots. There's lots of helicopter drone shots. Again, the directing is absolutely phenomenal. And again, I wish that this quality would have been in Doctor Who for the entire thing, because most of those episodes seem devoid of any real direction. It all just feels kind of cookie cutter. Same with Lorne Bough's score. I think it's a very different take on a score than compared to Murray's, which he seems to be quite self-indulgent and overly bombastic at this point. But Lorne seems to understand the tone of this series and how it has to be quite different. So from a production standpoint, I've absolutely loved all the decisions made with this series. And going back to the original design that they had for the Sea Devils, I do agree that the design they decided to go for, bar Salt and the other humanoid ones, I've absolutely loved the design. It stays true to the original Sea Devil design, but kind of streamlines them and make them much more, sleek, and I hope that we see some sort of battle happen in this last episode to really justify the design of their weaponry and this sort of combat ready design that the Sea Devils have.
Well, I mean, as some people said in the thread a lot earlier, it's called the war between the land and the sea. Can we get on with the war, please? I mean, if I put the thumbnail for tonight saying we're going to have a chat about how to make cups of tea, and I ended up talking about sci-fi, you'd all go off your head. I mean, honestly, you have to deliver, and it's not delivering on that. It's delivering Emmerdale. It's delivering EastEnders. It's delivering a bit of Star Trek Discovery, because as you know, they love to follow the different franchises. But I'd like that. Now, talking about your point about Goldie, about the direction, I noted a lot down. I wonder what other people thought. The screaming in the water was an interesting moment. I have to think the whole way it was shot. He fell into the water and he screamed and I know it's not very good for you to scream into water with your mouth open. The underwater shot of the diving bell, it panned all the way around, didn't it? It just panned, kept going. It was like a circular one track, and you saw one character at a time sweating, the different versions of nerves, and I thought that was an interesting take of the diving bell. The close-up of Kate in the cabinet meeting when basically she realised that the Prime Minister was captured by the billionaires and by, lobbies, and the close-up on her when she thought, I'm going to have to fight this. That was all worked. The direction and the tension in the diving bell, this is all part 3. I liked the whole out of control, the noises, the darkness, all that worked. I just think that needed to be the focus rather than the prep and all the rest of it earlier on. And obviously the direction of the beginning of part 4, when we had a code red, and the slow motion choice, where you got that effect where what's going on, and Kate's scrambling around. I don't know, that worked. It's just then we jump to another part that has a different vibe. I mean, Goldie, since you started talking about the direction, is there anything else you want to pick up on that direction, to be fair, before I come to Joe next?
I just really appreciate how dynamic the use of shots have been. We've seen slow motion, there's been tracking shots, dolly shots. The scene transitions have actually been done quite well, where the camera will be situated on a couple of characters, then it'll move to the side and there'll be like a wall, and it'll pass the wall and then seamlessly transition into the next scene. I think just something like that helps maintain the flow of the story quite well.
Yeah. So Joe, it doesn't have to be on the direction, it could be something else, but basically another big plus point in it. I mean, I was big on the direction, and I agreed with Goldie on that, actually.
It's overall a more satisfying product than what we've been used to recently, and it kind of, I did feel like we were back in the sort of better days of Who watching this. If we're going to put this in the universe, even though we did say if it stood alone, it would be very interesting. If we're going to go back to seeing it as part of the universe, it's maybe, if we're going to keep going down this road, it's maybe just injected a bit more class, a bit more competent overall. It's just better put together. I really should actually look at who the teams have been and see the differences and what's maybe made the biggest improvement. I think RTD being on a leash, he seems to be on a bit of a leash, and he always works better on a leash. I am struggling, to be honest, and I do want to be as positive as possible because God knows we need it.
Well, I'm not forcing it.
It was just too fussy for me, and I'm gonna have to go watch it again because I got really quite lost.
Well, I'm not forcing it. I will do the balance in the segments, and then if we really feel we have to go back to something we haven't discussed about, that may be more critical, we will do. But it's just to invite that moment so people know we're fair. Mark, any other big splashes or big impressions that you found as you watched those parts 3 and 4?
There was a standout moment for me, but maybe for all the wrong reasons. It's the scene where Sir Keith Spears gets assassinated at his front door. I think the best performance there was his tabby cat that just thought, I'm not sticking around for this. I'll go and have my kitty cat. Thank you very much. So I just thought that was quite upstaged by the tabby cat.
Well, I know, and there's all these little moments. I have to say before I forget, because if I'd have forgotten, I'd have been furious. Joe was mentioning the different fish and all the rest of it. There was that amazing moment. I actually quite liked it. I thought it was ironic that they're all down in part 3 in this Homer Aqua Sea Devil underworld, and as they're walking through, all the goldfish, all the fish are staring at them. And it's like a goldfish ball moment. And I kind of like that. I did. I thought that was the cheeky bit that Doctor Who sometimes does. It's a bit Carnival of Monsters. It's the miniscope. So I kind of did like that little touch. You saw all the fish at the windows, and she said that they're being curious. They want to look at you. And I just, there was something about that kind of worked for me. Just little moments, you see. But I do see that our thread are on fire regarding editing, regarding pacing, regarding plot, regarding messaging. So I will wrap up everybody, of course, and be fair. So Goldie, is there any? You've mentioned direction. You've made a big play on direction, which is fair enough because I agree with you. Is there anything else you want to say as a positive, a moment or anything?
Well, again, even though I kind of differ from, I believe, the rest of the panel when it comes to this, I do appreciate the little moments between Barclay and Salt. It's very much, well, it's kind of, this is a pun, but I don't intend it to be a pun. The scenes between them are kind of situated as being fish out of water moments. And we see that with Barclay when he's underwater and he's seeing how the underwater world operates. And then when Salt comes to the surface, I know it's viewed as a little bit cringy because she starts making all sorts of weird noises and starts screaming and things like that. But again, it's this idea of someone entering a new world and being fascinated by all the unique things that they don't find in their own. Like if you go to a different country or just a different environment, you are going to be drawn to the aspects which you don't see in day-to-day life. And I just think those moments humanize, develop those characters. It makes them just more interesting, really, than just being, stone-faced diplomats.
Yeah. So we've had 4 episodes. Right, one quick one. This is yes or no, and then I'll ask her something else. So Joe first. The question is basically, if you weren't coming on this channel, would you have watched those 4 episodes? And would you watch part 5 if you weren't coming on here to talk about it?
Yes.
Okay. Mark?
I would still watch the final episode, even though I'm not holding out much hope.
Okay. Goldie?
Yes.
Okay, that's just a quick punctuation, everybody. The thread are dying for us to be a bit more kind of on the critique front. You know, we will give the answers we want. I understand that. I mean, I'm not going to force my panelists to go down an event. They will stick to what they want. But I have to say, I've got loads of notes on the plot and the pacing. I did make a reference earlier to The Last of the Time Lords when we had the Martha Jones, Captain Jack, and David Tennant moment. You may remember it. There was a moment when you'd had all the drama of, you know, the Masters in Charge, Harold Saxon, and all that. And he'd set up the world, did RTD, you know, the Doctor's doomed. And then they went subway, and then they were like tramps. They hung around some little fireplace and chatted. Now, sometimes there can be great moments, like in Day of the Daleks, where Joe and the Doctor are having a wine and cheese nibble. And I don't know, they talk about the Blinovitch limitation effect, and it seems relevant to the plot. And nice relationship, warm. But I find some of these RTD moments with Captain Jack and the Doctor, I know why they're there, but they never work for me. They feel very kind of boring, dull. It's like, get on with it. And I found this with the pacing in this. The chat in the preparation before the diving bell, the fireside chat that I mentioned between both characters, Salt and Barclay, and obviously Kate and Ibrahim. I just felt the pacing was... They needed to decide what's the tone. Remember, Joe, they always talked about tone meetings with New Who and the first RTD era. New tone meetings. I felt as though they weren't quite sure where they were going, and not only tone meeting, I think they needed to decide what's our focus, which direction are we going in.
Yeah, it wasn't cohesive, and we get some really kind of profoundly serious, dramatic moments, and then really naff jokes, and the overall there's a little bit suffering from all the characters have been written by the same writer. You know, the best writers, all different characters really do have a different voice, and you feel you're dealing with different people. But sometimes maybe that's what happened in episode 4 for me, was the tone of the corporate characters and the government. Everyone was just on the same frequency, and it was hard to pull it apart for me. And then the overall tone of the show is, I mean, is it meant to be quite dark and sinister? Are we meant to be scared? Obviously not. There's nothing scary about it. So I don't know if it really knows ultimately what it was going for itself.
Well, it's like, look, I haven't seen part 5, obviously, but now we're 80% of the way through the mini season. I think I'm allowed to say, was the big pivot the assassination attempt with the bomb? Because that was a dramatic moment. And although you may have seen there were sowing seeds, like Mark thought, it still had the drama of a brilliant cliffhanger. And an amazing moment. I didn't think it quite followed up very well with her, you know, kind of, you know, going orifice to orifice and saving him oxygen-wise and all that stuff. So out of the 4 episodes, out of the 80% I've seen, I think the assassination attempt and the bomb underwater, that moment, the close encounters of the fishy kind in part 1, where you basically had that meeting of them in the water and the bit of communication, and maybe I suppose the grabbing of the Sea Devil, the corpse back by the other Sea Devils, was a nice little moment. And then I'm starting to kind of get a little bit like, there's been an awful lot of fleshing around. So if I come to you, Mark, I mean, moments that stand out, moments that are supposed to be important to this plot, I feel as though I'm missing something. There isn't enough.
You made an interesting point there when you drew on the similarities with the Last of the Time Lords scene from series 3 of the new era. There was a moment in that I really quite liked, and that was where the Doctor was recalling life on Gallifrey, and you got this nice little montage of what that world was and what it could have been like. and I suppose at that point in the series, for new viewers, that was something new and teasing. I think if you compare that to the similar scene in The War Between the Land and the Sea, they could have gone to the moment where Salt recalls what life was like before humans evolved and took over the world. You had those early teasers in the earlier episodes where you had some classified unit files, and I think it suggested evidence of what they discovered of the previous civilization pre-humans. You know, you could have seen that come to life in a bit more teasing of what that world was like before we evolved into who we are now. We've heard about this all the time throughout this one concept, and it would have been a nice little moment, I think. And like you say, I think you feel like you're slightly missing out on what you could potentially do there.
I just feel as though, Goldie, we're missing key moments. There's not enough. Don't know about you, Goldie.
Yeah, it would have been good to have a sort of "this is Gallifrey" sequence in this when Salt is talking about the Earth before the humans. That would have been a nice bit of connective tissue. I mean, I'm still kind of curious, and I'm hoping the final episode explains this. But why is she a mix between sea creature and human? I'm hoping that's explained, because there must have been some sort of, you know, interspecies relationship to form her, or maybe not. Maybe it's something else, or maybe it doesn't get it explained, which, knowing this is an RTD show, wouldn't surprise me. But I'm hoping we get some more of that. So yeah, there are some brief elements which they could just, again, expand upon, like Mark was mentioning, the whole faith aspect, and how we could have seen how Barclay reacts to other situations that incorporate faith into it. Now, we know that Barclay is not a religious character, because he mentions in episode 2 that he doesn't know why he showed respect, but there is that element that he is considerate, and he is in some way attached to faith, and so, or spirituality at least. So maybe we could have seen that play out again. This show, it's not really so much that I think that what we're presented with is flawed, but similar to Doctor Who, there are points where you go, okay, a bit more of that, a bit more. Oh, you're not going to do a bit more of that. So that's the, you know, which is surprising, because nearly every episode is an hour, and there's 5 of them, which is 5 hours. So you'd expect that a lot of stuff would be packed into 5 hours. But there are some points where you think, well, maybe that should have been given more time, which is also a result of characters like Kate being pulled to the front, who I don't think should really be in this, because she hasn't really done anything. She's just been sitting behind a desk giving orders, and I mean, anyone could have fulfilled that role.
Yeah. Funky, thank you very much. We need Zygons involved. Scarrison versus Merca, anyone? An upgraded Merca. Where's all the... I mean, I understand they're trying to stand on their own 2 feet and not make it Doctor Who, but we all said about part 1 and 2, there were so many references to Doctor Who, and Barclay was so impressed by the vivid Doctor that you think, well, you've already linked it to Doctor Who. So many people were shocked that it was linked to Doctor Who, and I think it's just suffering from kind of being in that kind of middle ground. Joe, I was going to ask you a question, because you've got that background in media production. Can you, from what you've seen in 80% so far, can you see this pitch working if it wasn't RTD?
If it wasn't RTD, in a, you know, we're still pitching Who, but without RTD, sorry.
As in, if I managed to get loads of money together, i.e. Disney, and I said, I have an idea for 5 parts. Basically, it's got a bit of unit, a bit of this, or a military organisation, and there's this bloke, he's an everyman, and his family's all mixed up, and what happens is this, and basically we go on this adventure that you've just seen. Would that pitch work? I am actually thinking this is a fairly lame, I personally think this is a fairly lame, padded out idea that if it didn't have Disney money and it didn't have RTD's name attached, it would never have happened.
Yeah, it doesn't have a clear objective, in my opinion. We discussed the message. What is the message? Because I'm not entirely sure what the message actually is that they're trying to get across. We've got War of Land and Sea, and we were promised this big epic. You're promised epic, and we're getting not epic. We're not getting any war. We're not seeing, I was kind of hoping for some, I don't know, even like sort of Aquaman-like scenes where you've got different fish beings pinching people out their houses or trying to terraform places and people trying to poison the sea to get them back. I mean, there's so much you could do with it that we've not been getting. And so back to your question, I think it's a bit weak to stand on its own. But even I think overall it's a bit, it's just basically a little bit too weak to stand on its own without Doctor Who, but we've not got Doctor Who. So I don't know how far it would have got. I mean, RTD had gone in with his big balls out saying, hey, I got the big balls, I can save this franchise. And I think they believed him at the time till they deflated.
I'm missing everything George just said there, Mark. Sea devils kidnapping humans, that sort of thing. The 1972 Sea Devils are nimble. They are fast. And I just was expecting attack squads and subterfuge and guerrilla warfare. And I've ended up getting the political intrigue that RTD's obsessed with, lots of chit-chats. Do you know, Mark? By the way, Mark, I think I really believe in what you're doing tonight. I really feel it. And all this talk, thinking, oh, get on with it. So I don't know about you, Mark. It's not what I was expecting.
I go back to a point that I think Goldie made earlier on that, you have some obvious time jumps in the plot of what we saw tonight. What they could have cleverly done, you could have ended on that cliffhanger of the bomb going off, but start it where there has been a significant time jump forward in episode 4. What are the consequences of that? Diplomacy has absolutely broken down. Two species are at conflict at that point. You could have made a very significant time jump there and cleverly invested in, right, well, here's where the war has started, where it's progressed to. How on earth do we get back to the drawing board? How on earth do we get back to a state of diplomacy? That's how I would have liked to have seen it gone a bit more. But yeah, it's going to be obviously quite lopsided if we do get a war in this final episode next week.
Yeah, very much so. So, I mean, honestly, I'm quite intrigued by what's possible. I'm going to come to Goldie, but first of all, I'll say thank you, Funky, for your comment and your generosity. It's typical RTD. This is big. Then episodes of people talking in rooms. Yes. So there you go, Goldie. I'm think, where's the big stuff? Where's the big moments? Is this really what it was all about?
I feel like when Russell hears these complaints, he'll probably come out and think he's all smart and go, no, guys, it was the Cold War between the land and the sea. You silly viewers, you thought there was going to be all sorts of fight sequences and explosions. No, it's a Cold War because that's the most interesting, marvelous type of war. But no, as I mentioned on our stream last week, how the concluding episodes wrap up the story will really determine how I feel about the series as a whole. I've enjoyed all the episodes up until this point, and individually I will continue to do that. But if this 5th episode doesn't wrap everything up and explore all the things that we need to be explored, and it doesn't properly delve into the underwater world any further, then this will kind of go down in my estimations, in my rating.
I've got to, and I'm going to come to that. Bill Silver, the message is that human beings are destroying the planet and the oceans quite deliberately, and if the fish could talk and tool up, they will get peed off enough to do something about it. Yeah, but that message is getting a bit lost now in the love affair. And she's even joked about Russell Tovey's ears, that make good gills and all the rest of it. And okay, right, a joke about that, right? Now I find it fascinating where we go with this, because RTD, Sea Devil is too racist. You can't joke about fish because a baddie in the episode said sushi. Oh, you don't say sushi when you're talking about Homer Aqua. That's a little bit racist. So there was that. Oh, that's vile. Oof. But you can joke about people's big ears. That's allowed. So I'm confused. I'm always confused by when do these people think we should have a sense of humor, and when should I be very serious? And it just seems to be when RTD decides. There's that one. I am very confused by that messaging. I've seen Woodhouse 1.9 million and 1.75 million is my prediction for the ratings. Yes, as you know, episode 1 got 2.8 or average. Episode 2 got 2.1. And then I think it started slowly for part 3. I worry about that. And I worry what people will think of part 4. I'm just thinking of the normal punter. But my big question to all of you is, you've now seen 4 parts. And as Goldie was saying, he will judge it on the resolution quite rightly. But that's because he's committed. There's a lot of, when I say casual viewers who are just flicking through channels, who they may have bought out of this now because it fell flat. I see somebody in the thread talking about Benjamin Cook. Now, Benjamin Cook famously is editing and Classic Who down to Fast and Speedy. Now, can you imagine a Benjamin Cook version of this 4 episodes? Bang, 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 bang. Let's get rid of all that dialogue. Let's get rid of that. Let's just... Do you know what I mean? It could have been ended up as 1 episode. It's just fascinating. So, where do you think, Joe, we're going to end up? Have you seen enough seeds of how this is going to be resolved? Have you seen... Can this all be... And do you care? Because I have to say, I'm starting to think, is it just going to be those 2 appear and... or have a baby and or something, and then everybody says we've joined the worlds and we need to believe? I'm starting to wonder, why are we so bothered about this romance or this relationship? Is that going to be the solution, Joe?
Well, first of all, we all know never to trust RTD in giving us any sort of resolution that's satisfying. So, we're prepared for it maybe not happening. From the reviews, I actually had a good look at how the reviews were going, and the biggest sort of feedback was that we are fed up being lectured to. We're fed up being told we're bad. Humans bad, 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 and it's just lecture after lecture. And that was what the sort of collective review seemed to be, and why people were walking away. To resolve it, I would say, if I'm going to go RTD, he's probably going to be about, I don't know, genetic splicing of humans and fish, so that we all have to get along together, because he's already introduced the idea of relationships with fish people, which is quite something considering all the decontamination they had to go through. But we can go to bed with them. That's quite interesting. There's a whole dynamic there.
Oh, I know. I'll look at my golf. I'm going to look at my goldfish.
I don't know. I just want to see some fighting and sharks and octopus. I mean, they're practically aliens. They could be using the octopus, not even seen a single one.
Yeah, let's have a seahorse.
Just something. But no, I'm gonna go with some weird interspecies, or a whole third party appearing that we have to team up against or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Mark, how's this going to be resolved?
I think it's going to be Barclay's character is going to be given a pearl. He's going to stick it in his neck, and he's going to become half human, half Homo Aqua, and it's going to be the diplomatic go-between between keeping both sides happy, much in the same way they did with what was the character in the modern unit who was a Zygon but wasn't a Zygon?
Osgood.
Osgood, yes. I'm wondering whether it will go down that route.
Right, Goldie.
I can absolutely see the last shot of this series being Barclay and Salt holding hands, swimming in the ocean together off. Because of how they've set up the end of episode 4 with "You will not swim alone. You will not swim alone." I can absolutely see the last shot being them swimming together. I can see that definitely.
Oh God! I mean, they mentioned all that algae last week. The algae and the plasma stuff in the water that they can all communicate like a collective hive. I thought, here we go for the reset button nonsense, the subwave networky thing. There was a bit of that I was sensing. I just wanted to show you this though, folks, because obviously last week we know the ratings, and as Joe was saying about was accused of lots of things. The reviews weren't very happy so far. So from what you've seen tonight, do you think this is going to pick up? So, BBC Sparks Woke Fury's new Doctor Who spin-off branded self-righteous box-ticking fest. The War Between and The Independent, surprise, surprise. The War Between the Land and the Sea review got 2 out of 5 stars. It's called Bland. And I have to say, in the end, I went for The Independent because that's normally not where you'd expect there's certain places it's gonna always attack and certain ones that are always going to defend. Look at this. It's wonkily bland spin-off that nobody asked for. If I just give you a précis of this and then I'll get your feedback. Honestly, it's all a bit fishy. They talk about who really wants 5 episodes of Unit. You never did in the 70s. It actually mentions this. It's always been a reliable rule of thumb that the more units in an episode, the more boring the results. Okay? Opinion out there. And then, of course, on this one, it's talking about it being slow moving, more adult, therefore, focusing on big themes like the destruction of the seas, the vanity and the ineffectiveness of career politicians, but it's all comedically simplistic. So if it gives something, it takes it away. Here, of course, it says, and I remember you saying this, Joe, last week, Tovey isn't quite nerdy enough to convince as a minor bureaucrat who has blundered his way into a top diplomatic role. His bizarre casting is merely a splash in the pond compared to the big wave of what the heck with Gugu. How was she convinced to don all these layers? And then it goes on to talk about her role as Salt. And I thought she was like the Queen of Naboo. All at sea is a monosyllabic fish lady. Now, this is what they said after part 1 and 2 and the bumbling Barclay and all the rest of it. And then just to finish off, folks, they have a go at RTD. Hello, yeah, not just us. And they talk about him, if you go halfway down, Davies, meanwhile, works hard at crowbarring in an environmental message early on. Blah, 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 about being poisoned. It's a reasonable point, but the well-deserved finger-wagging doesn't do much for the sluggish pace or the lack of a doctor. And finally, just to give you enough spice to bite on, let's be honest, says Independent, even at its best, Doctor Who was never about scintillating drama or cracking dialogue. We tuned in because the Doctor was an engaging character, like a sci-fi Sherlock Holmes. And so basically, that was after part 1 and 2. So Joe, do you think after part 3 and 4, the press are going to be kinder after you've heard that?
No. I didn't see anything, there's nothing jumped out about, other than the fish sex. There's not a sort of talking point to be had yet, is there? There's not like a scene, oh, did you see that? That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, and this was going on. There's nothing to be talking about. And going by how the viewing figures dropped off after one episode, it dropped quite significantly. I don't think they'll be coming back. So it's going to be interesting to see the figures again, just how low it's going to go. And it gave us nothing, really. It's very telling. My son got up and said, I don't care what happens. He's not going to... You know what I mean? He's not invested to wait till next week. Now, usually, even last week, I was like, well, we've got next week, and I'm kind of looking forward to it, and even that's gone, which is quite sad considering it's going to be, an end of series show is always something to look forward to, and it's just not there.
Well, they said this was a treat before Christmas, a binge watch before Christmas. And I'm thinking, what, boring us about climate and pollution and um, if you're going to watch a romance, there's some great romances out there. But honestly, you know, when people talking about Notting Hill or they talk about various movies that have got a nice romantic feel, do you think this is going to trump it? This is going to beat the Darcy Pride and Prejudice moment of Fish with Russell Tovey. Is that really going to trump everything, or is it worth not going there? And I think the press, I think, are going to be much more harsh after this, because now we've had 80%. Where's the delivery, Mark?
Well, I will always go back to saying that, you know, the Malcolm Hulk premise from the original series was, I would say, one of the best inspired pieces of development for that series. It was just it teased a really rich vein of storytelling. And of all the series that I would want to do well, I would want the War Between the Land and the Sea to do well. I'd want a new audience to get on board with that and really relish that world building that we all had sort of glimpses of, teasers of, when we were first introduced to these big high concepts back in the 1970s. And I feel it's disappointing and frustrating that I feel people aren't necessarily going to get that. The cherry on the icing on the cake that we would have, I would have wanted this to be. And I think those first opening episodes, I was really hopeful, and I remain hopeful, but I'm not holding my breath, not even underwater.
Goldie, your thoughts?
I am intrigued to see the reception to this show. So tomorrow we will get the 24-hour overnight figures. I'm expecting we'll probably get 7-day consolidated. I am intrigued to see how that plays out, because the BBC have been really pushing this series on iPlayer. As soon as you go on iPlayer, it's the big featured title. It's up there, big, bold, the poster's there. Do you want to watch the trailer? Do you want to see the full episode? Do you want to see more about it? Check out this link. That it's really been promoting it. So I'm expecting that it'll probably get a lot of catch-up views, but I am, you know, more interested to see how the overnights compare to last week's, and if word of mouth has affected it in any way, whether, you know, people have decided to go check it out, or maybe they've seen the headlines and decided, no, it's not for me. So that is something that I'm actually looking forward to.
And I think they may have missed a trick. Jamie's parents and my parents have not watched it yet. They didn't know it was linked with Doctor Who, so they're not interested. It's like, so they would normally watch kind of Doctor Who in the background. Number one, my parents know that I'll waffle on about it, so they'll watch it. But Jamie's parents tend to watch a bit of Doctor Who, and they've not bothered yet. So that's interesting if you think about where's everybody in the UK up to at the moment. And so you just think, maybe they missed a trick. Maybe they should have said it was Doctor Who. Maybe they should have made it Doctor Who. Maybe they should have really gone for it. And I just think that's what's maybe gone wrong here. Again, I remember last week, Joe, talking about strategy, and, you know, what was the strategy? I feel as though we're getting caught between stools.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because it all fell apart, you know. I think we've gone from having a huge visionary project sold by RTD that this was just a small part of, and when it all crumbled so early, we're just left with this kind of avalanche that's just going to sort of disappear off into nowhere, because what's coming after all this? What are we setting up here? So it's really unfortunate, and it's heartbreaking. I think there's a lot of hard work going into this, and I can see that even as a side dish to the main course. And I would say they could walk away saying, well, the side dish was better than the main course at this point, but it's not saying much.
So Joe, you've just coincided with my slide there. Is this better or worse than Doctor Who?
It's better than the last few series, I would say.
What can we take from this spin-off that should have been done in Doctor Who? Why is it better than Doctor Who? Is it the slower pace, the world building, the better time for direction?
RTD and Unleashed, a lack of promoting whatever the heck messages he was trying to ram down our throats. It's a little more simplified as well. We're meant to have good guys versus bad guys, right? But it is getting a little bit ambiguous and messy, all that. But it was a kind of simplified like we're going to war with these sea people. It was a nice, simple concept to go on. And we were treated like grown-ups. We didn't have these silly sort of doctor calling everyone babes and all this, sort of that tone's missing, thank God, because it was awful. I hate to say it, but we're just enjoying not having the Doctor around, which is a terrible thing to say.
One last thing before I do go to the lads with the same question, Joe. Do you think Rust might be the answer? Because they've made a big threat about Rust, and I did notice in the thread earlier, people saying, "Where's the big concepts? Is Rust a big concept?"
Why Rust? Because surely human beings being H2O mostly, that would be the key manipulative thing to own us with, is the fact that we're made of water, surely. But yeah, this Rust thing, I guess they've given us something to think about, but again, RTD's track record is just going to be a weak nothing burger, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll see 1 or 2 buildings rust as a little mini threat, and then it'll be over and done with. So, Mark, I know you've waited patiently, but the big question for me is this better or worse than Doctor Who? Depending on what your answer is, though, should we have done this in Doctor... You know where I'm going.
I think I would agree with Joe in that if you look at the scope of the Disney era of Doctor Who, this is the best of all of that, I think, and it does come down to the audience being treated with a little bit more sophistication. We still getting the being told how we should be thinking, but equally it does have a bit more nuance to it, whereas the previous 2 series of Doctor Who have been very, very silly, very babyish, quite literally in one episode. This just had a bit more sophistication to it, but I think if you look at it as a whole, I think probably a lot of people will say, thank God this is the end of the road with Disney.
Yeah, I'm just as I come to Goldie, I can see in some ways it is trying to be a bit darker than Doctor Who, slower than Doctor Who, therefore trying to be more adult than Doctor Who. You've heard what I've said about that should be in Doctor Who anyway, but I actually also see a problem in both, and it's they throw too many characters at us. So we had all them unit personnel as an example. We throw Mel in. Why did we ever get Bonnie Lanford back? She was never really given much to do. People were half expecting her to arrive in this. Why was Susan? Why Rani? I could go on. I find that New Who and this, in the end, throw too many characters at us and they never know what to do with them. That's just me. Goldie, what are your thoughts?
I will safely say that, it's safe for me to say, because I'm so confident in saying this, that this is leaps and bounds better than Doctor Who. Not that it's perfect, because of course we've talked about many of the criticisms we have, but this is a huge step up from Doctor Who, and there's many reasons for that. One, I think in general the acting is better when characters are talking to each other. I believe that these are characters and not actors reading lines, which is something you get in the previous iteration of Doctor Who. You have the fact that there's a more serious tone. You haven't got a pop song blasting out every 5 seconds. You haven't got your main character saying babes and honey and dancing and all this sort of thing. There's much more attention put on character, so you see how people adapt to different situations. emphasis is put on how they're reacting and how they overcome these problems. From a production standpoint, way more money seems to have been put towards this. And there's also the fact that Russell, while he has inserted some of his own personal beliefs and social commentary into this, it does feel like he has been restrained and that he's had someone over his shoulder going, you may want to take that a bit easy. Don't put that in as much. We need to actually put a story here. You can't just be telling the viewers what to think. So yeah, there are many, many reasons. And to generalize, nearly every aspect of storytelling, whether it is the production or the dialogue or the effects, everything just seems to be one or two steps up compared to the last iteration of Doctor Who, which is very sad because, again, as something we've all said, it's ridiculous that this little side project is the big thing to showcase when it should be the main show. And this should be something that you watch if you like Doctor Who, not something that you're recommended to watch opposed to Doctor Who.
What gets me, and I know I've said the point, so I'm not going to just repeat it. I'm going to try and expand on it. It seems to me they've spent more time on this, which is non-Doctor Who, but they've taken 5 episodes of budget away from Doctor Who to enjoy this, to indulge themselves, to slow down, to have a few cliffhangers, to explore character, and to really go for it. I wanted that with Doctor Who. But what they've done is they've given us, here's a quick episode. It's a bit of froth. And, and basically it's fast and speedy and nonsensical Doctor Who we've been thrown. And then this is, now we're going to be epic and thoughtful and a thriller and a this. And I am furious that they've really decided to steal 5 episodes of budget and 5 episodes of time away from re-establishing Doctor Who, relaunching Doctor Who, saving Doctor Who. And now they've thrown us Billy Piper to hope for the best. I'm absolutely livid that they've actually wasted so much time on this, and boy have they, instead of Doctor Who. And they've thrown at us, you can't have cliffhangers. Oh no, you can't take time with Doctor Who. The audience wants everything fast. And then they give us this. Slow, ponderous, padded. Excuse me, RTD and Pete McTighe, which version is the truth? Because you're giving me both ends of this. Joe, I'm finishing off before I go to bed. I'm in a mood.
I was in a mood too after that last episode. I think we're just feeling a bit battered and bruised and abused by, we all of us here just want and wish for some good Doctor Who. It's the Doctor Who's what's uniting all of us that have turned up here on a Sunday night just to find out what's happening, even when it's on its knees and gasping for air. We are still showing up, just hoping that it's going to go somewhere. And I mean, that's pretty amazing. But yeah, it's like I feel like a dog that's been thrown a bit of a bone.
Yeah.
I'll kind of take it for now. Yeah. Let's hope the future is going to improve for us. But I don't know how they're going to follow on from this and what the heck is going to happen.
Oh, Joe, I mean, I feel as though I've been thrown crumbs for nearly a decade now.
Yeah.
So, Mark, I'm not. This is not infected anger. I am furious at this. Really,
I think I kind of think that, let's face it, we've had a great run of modern Doctor Who. I think it did come back with a bang in 2005. It introduced a whole new generation to that world, that universe. At this stage, it's kind of become a victim of its own success, and this latest era, it just feels like a bit of a beached whale, really. Tide's gone. tide's gone out, and yeah, I think if I'm honest with you, I would be happy for there to be a rest, for people to take time to actually think, well, where does it go next, rather than rush things out for money's sake. I'd rather there be time and investment in plotting and planning where this franchise would go.
And I have to say, Goldie, you've heard all my thoughts. I won't repeat them, but I'll give you this example. A lot of people bought season 1 Blu-ray collection, and it wasn't my era. I was too young, but I've watched it obviously like lots of Doctor Who fans. Yeah, 6, 7 episodes, most of them, and all the rest of it. Can I say, when you saw Unit then, that's my reference, if that had Disney money in 1970, can you imagine stretching out a plot, interesting characters, you've got the Unit action scenes and all the rest of it. I don't know why we can't do that now.
Yeah, it is such a shame when you look back to the classic episodes, many of which have just fantastic storylines, but of course they were limited by the effects, the amount of money they had for the production. Even though Doctor Who should be praised for how the production team utilized how much little money they did have to create something good, it is sad when you see what they can accomplish with a budget like this, but they don't really have the dialogue or the characterization to go along with it. So it is one of those things. It is just a great tragedy that the great creative minds of the past were so limited with what they could do, when if they were alive now and making Doctor Who now, they would be creating the most magnificent stories, and Doctor Who would be in such a great shape. But I do agree with Mark that this series should be the last thing of Doctor Who that we see for ages. Now, we know that Russell was writing a Christmas special for 2026, so of course they're not going down that route, but it would be good. And I understand that the BBC are obviously thinking that even though Doctor Who has been a failure for the past decade, of course it is in the back of their mind that when Doctor Who is done right, that it's a big moneymaker for them. Where if you look at the collection box sets, they're always at number 1 of the charts, because all the classic fans are immediately going out to buy those collection box sets because they're of stories that they really love. And if modern Doctor Who was like that, the BBC would be making bank. But if anyone at the BBC was actually really smart, they would understand that what the show needs is a good rest, because more than anything, you need to get that bad taste out of people's mouths. There are people who went into this show, even though it is a separate show, remembering what they saw a few months ago with Doctor Who. And so you need to have a few years rest and let people refresh and be open to more Doctor Who, and you need the industry to sort itself out. And that's really what needs to happen, because I doubt that we're really going to see much difference in 2026, which is a shame.
It is a shame. I think that seems to be a phrase I and panelists seem to be using an awful lot over the last 2 years. It's just a shame. It's just a shame. Every opportunity is kind of a promise and then not quite delivered on. So we just we're like a fish that's been caught, but you're not going to eat it. You just let it kind of flap about for as long as possible, then you throw it. I just feel as though that's how we are. We're gasping for air. We're gasping for something, but it's not quite delivering. Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Goldie. It's been really good, because I don't know what you're going to say. It's certainly not an echo chamber. And actually, as soon as I started saying, let's do something positive, because obviously I can see what the thread's saying, they say, no. You just go for it. And everybody just wants to hear your opinion. So it's been great. Thank you, Joe. Hopefully we get you for the wrap up next week.
Yep, sure.
Very good. And Mark, are you up for one more go of this next week?
I'll try to. I'm away next week, but I'll try and see if I can jump on.
Okay. And Goldie, one more go?
Absolutely, if you have me.
Of course. It's not an echo chamber, and I've really appreciated all you coming on. Thread, you've been fantastic. Some of you have got work. Some of you have got bed. I'll have to be up for hours now because I'm angry. So thank you, everybody. See you again this week. I've got Disbrew this week, Wednesday. Hello. See you later.
Bye.
RTD1 Sense Sphere shut down.
dying to die. This is giving me the creeps. This never happened on finger bombs. One by one, they're all mine. They don't like it up 'em. All this walking, I wish I had my Benidorm motor scooter.